I have a brother that's earned a PhD. You have to do I think it's like a thesis. It's a very long article, book. It's a book basically.
Yeah.
That shows that you're proving a very specific point. Now, I don't know I think it's called like a dissertation. I don't know what his dissertation's on, but obviously it has something to do with criminology.
Right.
And criminology, if we were to look up the definition of what criminology is, it's the scientific study of crime, criminal behavior, and the criminal justice system, including the prevention and treatment of crime. If he's writing a thesis or a dissertation for a PhD degree on crime to become a criminologist, it would make sense that he would be, that you can't hold, like in court, that would not necessarily hold up to just prove that he's the killer because he went on Reddit and was asking about that.
Right.
Because you can also say, hey, I was doing it for research purposes. I do believe, though, because my brother's PhD was on, it was in music. And I believe that his dissertation was on how learning an instrument, the impact that it has on the brain and on education, and how it makes you better at learning. Basically, on like a dumbed down version. Yeah. Obviously, his version was a lot more smart than the explanation that I'm giving.
Right.
But that's what it entails to write a thesis like that.
Right.
My thinking is that he was an individual that was obsessed with this individual, Maddie. And that and I have two theories. And my second theory is out of this world, fucking batshit crazy, but it is a potential theory.
Okay.
First theory is he's studying for his PhD. He wants to know what it's like to kill somebody. He wants to know what it's like to kill somebody, but also know what he wants to know. If everything he's learning at school that has to do with crime, that has to do with crime scenes, how true is it? Because he's going to get all the information about how their bodies were positioned, about how the crime scene looked from the news.
Right.
But most criminologists are never there when the crime actually occurs. I bet you money there's a statistic that 99.9% of criminologists have never actually been in the room when a brutal crime happened or witnessed it with their own two eyes.
Right.
I think he wanted to take his learnings to the next level. I think he did not only want to learn about criminology and get his data from actually asking criminals questions such as how did you pick and what did you use and things like that.
Right.
But he also wanted to follow through on what they said
and
so that he
feel
can
that out
physically
for himself.
See with his eyes, is what I'm learning in school and the information that we're gathering online accurate. That would make him better at his job, but also give him the knowledge to know from a criminal's perspective what they're thinking, what they're feeling, why they do certain things. And I think that maybe he had an unhealthy obsession with Maddie and he decided to use her as a victim.
Maybe.
He used all of the same tactics that one of the most well-known serial killers of all time that managed to vanish off the face of the earth for 40 years was using. The only thing that they used to tie it to him was his cell phone data and all these records. Right. But that's still not even enough. So he knew that he'd probably get exonerated off of that data. Right. But he probably did everything in his power to make sure no DNA was there. And the fact that he was able to do these brutal murders and leave no traces of DNA except for one little speck of DNA on the knife sheath just goes to show how well he was able to mask his crime.
Yep.
So that's probably his only fuck up.
Yeah.
In his mind, he's probably thinking, damn it, that little piece of evidence, that tiny ass little piece.
Right.
But outside of that, there was nothing else.
Nothing else.
Now, unless they're able to find it on this glove and
whatever else they found.
Whatever else they found.
Right.
Now, there's a gag order on the case. Obviously, we're going to learn more about it in June, and we'll be providing update episodes as that's going on.
Right.
But that's my theory. He wanted to know what it was like, and that's why he used that very specific knife. It creates so much damage, so much blood, so much everything that it was guaranteed this person would die. I think Brianna Fox and the other investigators were right that he went in there to kill one person, but ended up killing the second person, running into another person, and then ended up running into another person. And by the time he technically maybe ran into Dylan,
Right.
because the fact that Dylan was able to see him and give that description, he probably knew that she was there too, but he's like, yo, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I've been here way longer. I didn't set out to kill multiple people.
Right.
That's probably how, think about this. That's probably how DNA even ended up on that knife sheath. I'm not a criminologist. I've never committed a murder, nor do I ever plan to.
Right.
But somebody that does study criminology, that's able to clean up that well, him getting caught off guard with Kaylee also being there with Maddie is probably the only thing that made him catch a hiccup in the moment.
Right.
Because he even left behind the knife sheath. If he had taken that with him, we wouldn't have that DNA.
No one would know.
But he probably ended up not taking that with him because he got caught off guard.
Yeah.
He did that murder, and
Also,
as he's trying to
probably
leave
Kaylee
quickly,
was fighting.
that's how he ran into.
Well, we know that
Xana.
Kaylee was fighting for her life, right?
Yes.
So obviously she must have been kicking and screaming and fighting, right? There's a slight chance that the knife sheath ended up falling based on them, like, on her physically fighting for her life.
And he says, I gotta leave. And as he's trying to leave quickly, he forgets the knife sheath.
Right.
But then also he runs into Xana,
Right.
who he's not expecting to be awake, but also he's like, damn, I wasn't expecting
Now
this.
I have to, right.
That's probably where they hear the voices. He's probably talking to her, probably trying to lie. Who knows?
That's
and
true.
that's where the loud thud comes in and all that other stuff. But that's my first theory. My second theory is that this is some Scream bullshit. You ever seen the movie Scream? How there's like a bunch of, you've seen the movie Scream.
Yeah.
How there's a bunch of different twists and turns and people that you don't think are involved
Are
involved the whole
Right.
time in a weird way. I don't think the roommates were involved, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up being involved in some way, shape, or form, because taking 8 hours to call the cops, seeing your friend who was clearly brutally murdered laying on the floor but thinking that she's just passed out doesn't make sense to me.
And
if
then
the crime
you
scene
not
was
doing
that brutal.
anything about it. That's the thing. Like,
The crime scene was that brutal. You saw that she was unconscious and you're on the phone. It's not, oh, hey, my friend was murdered. It's she's unconscious.
right.
I find that weird. It took 8 hours to call the cops and there's a 13th visit apparently.
Right.
Could that have been a cleanup?
Of some sort.
That they were just
Because
making sure that they
who
cleaned
knows at
up?
what time he showed up at that house.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe Bryan is just so sick that he left that little piece of DNA on the knife sheath on purpose.
Yeah.
And said, that's going to be your only thing and it's still not going to matter.
Because he probably knows. Like, it's not enough.
Studying criminology, you know what's going to work in court and what's not.
Exactly.
You know what evidence to leave behind and what evidence not to.
Exactly.
You know what can possibly stick in court and what can't. And the first words out of his mouth when he gets arrested is to his lawyer is that he's looking forward to getting exonerated. That does not sound like somebody
That sounds like planned behavior.
That does not sound like somebody that's saying, hey, I'm innocent of this crime.
No.
What the fuck? Like, that sounds like I'm looking forward to proving that I can get away with this.
Right.
Going on to become a criminologist.
Right.
And, maybe he doesn't want to work in criminology. Maybe he was just, I don't know. That's so weird.
That's what I mean. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I feel like you said, I feel like your first theory is completely right. I feel like he was very obsessed with criminology and all that stuff. And he really did want to feel out for himself what that was like. I felt like that's what he was aiming to do. And he probably met like Maddie at one of those bars or one of those places that, people just hang out in and stuff. Like, he probably just met her, blah, 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 blah. He was like, you know what? That is the perfect victim. And then he started following her and then like stalking her, seeing what her schedule was like. And obviously, I feel like there was times, the time that he ended up going to the house was the times that he knew Maddie was and wasn't around.